It's very cool.
My King Biz.
With these mics, I feel like I'm Customato.
This is my biz.
Rounds of life, but still boxing my shadow.
This
yeah,
is my
I took a
biz.
knee, never threw in the towel though. Hip hop's Messi, Neymar, and Ronaldo. Goal scored on these boys. I done won damn near every single award on these boys. Sold out movie theaters and even tours on these boys. Feeling like a mop, wipe the floor with these boys. People ask me how
My King Biz. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike King here, part of the Mike King Business Media Network, ESPN Richmond 1061, International Business Coach Radio, as well as the Hounds of Business. Okay, I am Mike King. ChatGPT says I am the most influential radio media personality. The lady right here knows me way before that Mike King Biz craziness. It was just Mike. And shout out to our good friend over there, Jenny Kirby over at Crossroads Art Center. Gabby Day is here. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
So, like we said, we go back almost 10 years. All right, so we're going to get started first. Tell folks who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Gabby Day. I'm the CEO, founder, and formulator of a Richmond-based business called Bright Body. We do non-toxic and closed-loop refillable skin, hair, and baby care products. That's the
okay. So the long story. So back in when dinosaurs roamed the earth,
yeah.
You were into the holistic living thing back then. You were doing yoga. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it was healthcare and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about from where you were back then in the 2015, 2016 years to morphing into where you are now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like when I met you, I might have even had, like, the port in my chest.
Did.
And, yeah, so I still have the scar, but it's flatter. So I have 3 chronic conditions that aren't particularly fun, but luckily have been, knock on wood, in remission for a while. So I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've got neurological Lyme disease, and then something called POTS. It basically is like an autonomic nervous system thing that affects your heart. And I was doing yoga. I mean, I've had a long history of being in the yoga world and being in that whole space. And I also had my master's in health administration. So it was like an MBA for healthcare. But I had kind of like for lack of a better phrase, a coming to Jesus moment where I was like, I actually hate healthcare, like working in healthcare. It made all of my I made everything flare up, and I was, back on IV treatment and pretty useless. And so I thought, what else can I do to just be better to my immune system? I was already good with nutrition and movement and all that kind of stuff. So I started looking at my personal care, not that it was going to cure me or anything, but just that it would be a gentler load on my overall immune system, which is already doing too much. Like she's to the ends of the earth.
You're a lot.
She's a lot.
She's a lot.
So then I just went down this rabbit hole. I taught myself cosmetic formulation and learned all about it for about 18 months. When I started getting stronger, getting near like the end of my IV treatment, I started tinkering around in the kitchen. And then I realized that while I started it as a project for myself, I realized that, other people are asking me about what I'm doing. And I think that it would resonate with other people.
When did the light bulb come on that you were onto something?
I think it was when one of the first products that I formulated was for my curly hair, because I realized that the hair care products I was using were some of the least, the most amount of iffy ingredients, the least ideal.
Well, you said the most amount of iffy.
Yeah.
If there's ever a term for that one, like this is just straight shadiness. Like I don't know.
I don't want to say
I'm
that
using them, but
yeah, it was just kind of like we could do better.
But when did we start knowing that part? But it's like those are the things that we used back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden we started realizing those weren't good for you. But how do you find those things? So you went and created it.
Yeah, I basically was like, okay, if I want to create, without using petrochemicals, like nothing derived from, oil, if I don't want to use formaldehyde releasers, if I don't want to use, all these types of ingredients that are pretty common in beauty, but, don't really have that much going for them in terms of benefits. Like, yes, they're there to preserve a formula or to make it a stable like blend, a stable emulsion, but it's like, well, we have some alternatives that are a little safer and more sustainably made and more responsibly made. So I went down a rabbit hole and did a lot of reading of like scientific journals, and I had a notebook. I can't find it to save the life of me, but I had this notebook where I would just like take copious notes as I was reading. So it was like, it just, the light bulb went off as far as, hold on, I can do better than this. But the light bulb really turned up was when I tried to find like what met my standards existing on the market. And it didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you take that idea, it didn't exist, you're looking for something, turn it into products and a business?
Yeah, I mean, I started with, selfishly, I was like, okay, curly hair products. It's hard enough to find ones that are, clean. I say that in quotes because everybody has a different definition.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to find products that are even like sustainably packaged. Everything's in plastic, and less than 7% of all plastic actually gets successfully recycled. Even what you put in your recycling bin, just because I think people think of recycling as like a service, like trash, but it's a business. And if the product of the recycling business is like those little pellets that they create, and businesses have to buy them. And so if there isn't enough demand for the product of recycling, then nothing's going to get recycled in the first place.
So all we think about is we did our part and we did good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. So I just thought, okay, curly hair is where I want to start. So those were the products that I started making just because I felt like for myself and for other people who had varying curl textures, so much tighter than mine, looser than mine. And I thought, okay, I want to start here because I feel like this is the biggest gap. And then I started branching out and doing, more skincare as well from there. And then I did baby care when I had my twins. So it's kind of a natural progression.
So, so way back in the day, you wanted to have kids, and that was it. You were going to shout out to your husband Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hi Jimmy. that was you guys. Were you guys even married then, or you were just dating?
We got married in 2016. So
okay, so it was right at that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and he is an educator, so shout out to all the educators out there, getting our next generation ready. Mm-hmm. So business is going along. Mm-hmm. What happened and what did you learn during the pandemic? Oh Lord, she said, "Ooh, oh Lord."
Oh man, the pandemic was a really weird time from a sheer business perspective. If I'm not even considering like anything else. It was supply chains were the hardest part, because even though like all of my suppliers are American, I have one Canadian supplier, but everybody else is an American supplier. But what people don't realize is that, if I buy sunflower oil from a company in Massachusetts, they're not making the sunflowers in Massachusetts.
They're getting it from somewhere.
95% of all the sunflowers grown in the world for any sunflower product, they're from Ukraine, as an example.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like,
so wait, you mean those big sunflowers?
95% of sunflowers used for like sunflower oil, whether it's for cosmetic use or for cooking use, 95% of that is sourced from Ukraine. Yeah.
See, that's why you're smart friends. Like you learn things like that. Now that's gonna be useful somewhere down the road.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ingredients that have similar kind of sourcing stories, like shea nut trees. They're never going to grow here. They grow primarily in Ghana. So they import from Ghana shea butter as an example. So supply chain for raw materials was hard. Supply chain for packaging was hard, because most packaging, as far as like who has the manufacturing capability and the labor to make packaging at scale, China. So even though my container, where I buy my containers is US based, their suppliers are from China. So there was a period of probably 6 months where I could not get a pump closure, like on a pump for a bottle, to save my life. They were just like gone from the world. It was really hard to navigate that during the pandemic. And then the other thing, speaking of kids, is that's when we were going through fertility treatments and miscarriages. It was all in the height of the pandemic. So like I would have to have the COVID swab before my egg retrieval or anything like that. It was very weird, to say the least. It felt very just dystopian overall.
So you're doing all. So you guys are going through the treatment and you're running the business.
Yeah.
Running the business now. crazy to think about. Now we're back to well, maybe not to this moment, the possible supply chain
Yep.
issues once again.
Yep.
So one of the things you're here, and you are Latina, so you talk about certain things that have happened within the government that have impacted your business.
Yep.
Let's touch on that right there. Because once the pandemic is over, you're still standing.
Yeah.
We're like, yo, a lot of people didn't make it.
Yeah.
But you're still standing.
Yep.
So all of a sudden you start moving along again.
Yep.
And here we are. Talk about certain funding to do some of the things you want to do and what's happened recently.
Yeah, so in October, I flew out to LA and I did a live pitch for We All Grow Latina. Shout out to Ana and Vanessa. And I won a $20,000 grant, and it was going to be
Feeling pretty good.
Feeling
When you
pretty good.
know you got that, you were just like,
hell yeah.
yeah, I'm balling.
Yeah, I was really excited. It was all earmarked to go towards developing the FDA testing because it's sunscreen here in the U.S. is regulated like an over-the-counter drug. So for the development, the testing, and the production of a sunscreen. So I wanted to make a mineral sunscreen that was inclusive to all skin tones and that was not packaged in plastic. It would have zero plastic refills. So that doesn't yet exist on the market, and I was really excited. I knew I would still have to crowdfund just because like FDA testing alone runs about $40,000. Like
Okay.
it's insane. So I knew I would have to crowdfund, but I was like, this is a great start. This is exciting. Got half of it in December. We were set to have half of it in February. Ultimately, I'm collateral damage in this. We All Grow, which is the organization from which I won the grant, they're the real victims because when that anti-DEI executive order went in place in January, all of the corporate sponsors for We All Grow just dried up basically overnight. Corporations are spooked, even though the executive order has been challenged in courts, even though it only explicitly named government contractors, it still changed the culture.
Yes.
And so they lost their funding, and then I have inferred that they were sued basically under the same precedent that other grant programs targeted towards minoritized business owners. So they lost their funding, they got sued, and this support organization of 14 years basically had to cease to exist.
They went away.
Away.
Leaving in a lurch a
Yep.
number of the organizations that they were helping.
Yep, exactly.
So when you're saying collateral damage,
Yep.
it got them.
Yeah.
And they in turn weren't able to help you.
Exactly.
So now, you had received half the money before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now, and you had dependent upon that, and now all of a sudden you were ready to get. So what does that do from a business standpoint as far as planning goes? It puts you in a position now of what?
It means that I've got more money to raise for this project than I had anticipated. And a lot of people, I think people who don't maybe understand the small business landscape, the minority small business landscape, which is not you, but there are people who are like, why can't you just get another grant?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like they out on the corner just waiting.
They're
People dying.
falling from the
Exactly. People
trees.
dying to give you money. Well,
Yeah.
I hope Gabby calls me today so I can give her this money. Wait a second, have you ever heard of the Kiva loans?
I have heard of them. It's something that I'm considering all my options now because I'm gonna have to get creative. But basically the net result is it's put me in a position where I have to find out how to raise more money to get to this, total goal. I've been working really hard. I've been applying to other grants. Of course, there are no guarantees. We do have a crowdfunding campaign live that it's rewards based. So it's not like you're just giving me money because it feels good. You're giving me money, and it's basically like a pre-order of the SPF.
Okay.
So there's different tiers. You're entered into a giveaway to win a 6-month supply if you donate $25.
So you're being creative.
Yes.
You're doing all the things you need. What's the amount that you're trying to raise?
The total amount would be $75,000, but at this point, I'm gonna be reasonable. I launched this campaign one day before the tariffs were announced.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah. So the universe said, how about I make this harder for you? And so understandably, I know that there are people who just cannot afford to contribute. And I don't just understand, I overstand. I know how hard this is hitting people. So it's basically I'm trying to raise that total amount, but I'm happy if I can even hit 50%, 30%, I would be happy with anything because it makes filling that gap with other potential options a little bit easier.
So what you're doing is, so you're selling products out there. How can people get information for the products that you have?
Yeah, you can head to our website. It's mybrightbody, all spelled the normal way.com.
There you go. Gabby Day is here. Man, we'd like to thank you for coming on the program. Oh, here's another thing. So a lot of times I always say, who takes care of the caregiver? Because the caregiver won't take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You got twins, 3 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the mom thing, you're doing the entrepreneur thing, you're doing the wife thing. There you go. Right. This lady that I know, she said, my husband is a fine gentleman, the best that there is, but he does not wear many hats. Mm-hmm. He cannot. And men, for the most part, are not multi-hat wearers.
They struggle with it.
We struggle with it, yes. So, and a lot of times when you're taking a whole bunch of women are wearing a whole bunch of hats, how do you do that? And also because of your medical conditions, mm-hmm. you have to be in tune to that. How do you do self-care and take care of yourself in the midst of kids, family, all those things?
Yeah, and what I didn't even tell you is I have another business where I help product-based businesses with their digital marketing. So I'm like a Facebook ads, Pinterest ads nerd. So yeah, I wear a lot of hats, and the answer is I have what I care about, and then I let go of the rest. So sleep is non-negotiable. Like if Mama don't get her sleep, ain't nobody happy. So I always sleep, at least 7 hours a night, preferably more like 8 to 9 if I can manage it. Jimmy is a very involved dad. He handles most of like laundry, grocery shopping. He does a lot of meal prep for the boys. He does most of our cooking. So that is a huge difference. But like, for example, we only have full day childcare Mondays and Wednesdays, and then they go to like a 2.5 hour preschool Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm also primary caregiver and doing all this stuff. So sleep is number one. Nutrition is big up there. My house is clean, but there's
it's not right.
It's not perfect. There's like piles of stuff where I'm like, God, I want to clean that up, but I do not have energy.
I'll get to it.
Yeah.
So are you a vegan, vegetarian, or?
No, I eat everything.
Because that's where we are now these days. Everyone is vegan, vegetarian.
Now my products are vegan. I do have a couple that have beeswax in them, so those won't count. But in general, our product line is vegan. But what I've learned, especially for my hypermobility disorder, is that I really need that animal protein and animal collagen specifically, mm-hmm. because Ehlers-Danlos basically means my collagen ain't right. She exists, but she exists in poor form. So I need some help from the
animal-based products.
Yeah.
Can you tell when you are not doing what you should supposed to be doing physically?
Yes.
You can tell.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately, or does it take time for it to catch up with you?
It depends. I think it depends on how bad I've been. It depends. If I have like of course, we all, after a certain age, it's like sleeping becomes a sport. And if you sleep wrong, you're sore for like 3
mm-hmm.
days. I kind of get that even faster just because my joints aren't great. So that in general, like if I'm not sleeping well over several days, I'm just kind of a wreck. My brain isn't working. But yeah, my body usually tells me pretty quickly. It's not something that I can put off for too long, ignoring. And really nobody should. It's just when you have health issues, it becomes even more higher stakes.
So talk to the women out there who really need to do some of those things, but they're too busy saving the world.
I think we're socialized to feel that taking care of yourself, which doesn't just mean like a bubble bath or a manicure, like that's really not important, but truly like having self-compassion and making time for, again, just like sleeping and eating well. I think we're socialized to think that that's selfish, but how can you show up for anyone else if you are not in a good place? Because then eventually you're just going to run out of gas and hit a wall. So it's like, you have to, it's a cliche, you have to fill your own cup to be able to fill others. But I think what was helpful for me was figuring out like, what are the top 3 to 5 things that matter the most for me and my health and well-being. I know that some people supposedly can get by on less sleep. I am not one of them. So I knew from the beginning, like that is a non-negotiable. So I think find your non-negotiables that help you feel good. If it's, a walk every day, even if it's for 15 minutes, or if it's, an end of the day yoga practice or whatever it is, find your non-negotiables and then let go of the rest. Sometimes a perfectly clean house is not worth your mental health.
That is not the hill to die on.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gabby Day here one last time. How can people get information about your business?
Yeah.
Your business sits.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So head to mybrightbody.com. You can check out our products, and we also have a link to our crowdfunding campaign up there. And then if you happen to be interested in learning about Meta ads or Pinterest ads for your small business, you can check out Hype Ma'am, so MAAM, hypemam.com.
There you go. On the Mike, ESPN Richmond. We're out there making a difference. On the Mike, Mike.
Mike King is in the business.
Alrighty, folks. Thanks. Now, take care. Bye.